They mocked the foreign woman by sending her to clean a madman's barn. The joke, however, was on them. The dust in that high desert valley was a permanent resident. It didn't just coat boots, it seeped into souls, especially those the town had deemed worthless. Her name was Lee. On that sweltering afternoon, she stood before the porch of the general store, the taste of that dust thick on her tongue, while the laughter of men washed over her like something foul. Mayor Sutton, a man whose ledger was his scripture and whose soul was a shallow, dried-up creek bed, rocked in his chair. He didn't see a person, he saw a problem. A stubborn, silent problem in a dress that had been mended too many times. "We've found you honest work," he announced, his voice carrying a false, booming charity meant for an audience. "Up at the Broken Will Ranch, on the far ridge. A man named Elias Crow needs his stables tended. A strong back, that's all. You go. You work. You don't come slinking back until he himself says the job is done." The cluster of men by the water trough grinned, their teeth stained with tobacco. They all knew the name. Elias Crow. More legend than man. A giant who lived in the shadow of the Black Cliffs, a story told to make children behave. To send a woman, this woman, there was not a job offer. It was a sentence. A hope that the mountain would simply make her disappear. The trail to the ridge was not a road. It was a cruel, winding gash cut into the side of the world by runoff and neglect. Lee walked. She did not allow herself the release of tears, for her thirst was a sharper, more immediate agony than her fear. When the ranch finally came into view, it was a sight to shrivel hope. The main cabin was a huddle of dark timber and stone, hunched against the sky. But the stables, they were a tomb. Long before she reached them, the smell announced their presence, a staggering, physical wave of rot, ammonia, and decades of despair. The great doors hung from one hinge each, sagging inward like the entrance to a beast's forgotten gullet. This was her purgatory. Her only path forward was to step inside. Her knock on the cabin door was a small, dry sound. It was wrenched open before the echo died. The man who filled the frame seemed carved from the very rock of the ridge. Elias Crow. His beard was a wild, grizzled storm around a face of hard angles. His eyes were not just dark, they were like chips of obsidian, absorbing the light and giving nothing back. He looked down at her, and his silence was a weight pressing the air from her lungs. "Sutton sent me," she managed, her voice a rasp. "To clean your stables." A sound rumbled deep in his chest, more animal than word. "Sutton," he repeated, the name a vile taste. He saw the game laid bare in an instant, the town's cowardice, their cruel sport. His gaze traveled over her slight form, her threadbare shawl, her hands already clenched into nervous fists. "Leave," he commanded, a single stone of a word, and began to swing the door shut. Then, Lee moved. It was pure, desperate instinct. She stepped forward, the worn toe of her boot meeting the door's edge, her small body becoming the wedge. "No," she breathed, and then found a stronger voice from a deeper well. "I will work." Crow went perfectly still, his obsidian eyes widening a fraction. This defiance, from this tiny frame, was an equation he could not solve. He snorted, a puff of contemptuous air. He jabbed a calloused finger past her, toward the reeking, dark maw of the stable. "You want work? There it is. Finish it. Do not set foot near this house again." The oak door slammed with a thunderous finality that shook dust from the porch beams. Lee turned. She faced the darkness. The task ahead was a monument to impossibility. The floor was a landscape of hardened waste, stratified by years, like some foul geology. She found a shovel with a splintered handle. She untied the scarf from her neck and bound it over her nose and mouth. And then, she began. The work was a form of violence. The ancient manure resisted like cement, her blisters formed, burst, and wept into the rough wood of the handle, and the sun, filtering through broken roof planks, became a focused, punishing lens. She forged a rhythm in the chaos, the crunch of the shovel's bite, the grating lift, the heavy trudge to the growing midden outside, the empty return. She did not stop. From the single dusty window of the main cabin, Crow watched. He expected flight. He anticipated the sight of her small figure fleeing down the trail before the hour was out. Instead, he saw only motion, a stubborn, relentless pendulum of labor. He saw her stagger under a load too heavy for her, right herself, and continue. He watched her stumble over a hidden tine, skin her knee on the rough floor, and rise without a sound. It was irritating. It was baffling. As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in fire, he saw her finally break rhythm. She dropped the shovel, stumbled to the water trough, and collapsed against it, her head bowed, her shoulders heaving. Something tectonic shifted inside his stone chest. He moved to the kitchen pump, filled a tin pail to the brim with cold, clear water, and walked outside. He set the pail on a flat rock a few paces from her. The condensation immediately beaded on the metal. "Drink," he grunted. He did not wait for a response or a glance. He turned his back and walked to the house, pausing only at the bottom step. Without looking back, he added, "The east stall needs fresh straw by dark. Fail, and you sleep in the yard." It was not kindness. It was a transaction. But it was not cruelty. It was an acknowledgement. Days blurred, one into the next, forming a new, calloused rhythm. The stable began, inch by agonizing inch, to transform. The floor emerged, dark-stained but solid. Lee did not stop at the waist. She hauled endless buckets from the creek, scrubbing the wooden walls until the grain showed through. She sorted the tangled tack, oiling leather, and rubbing rust from metal. Crow's silence held, but his language became one of action. The wobbling wheel on her barrow was one morning found true and greased. A loaf of bread, still warm and wrapped in a clean cloth, appeared on the fence rail. The true turning point was the bay mare. A high-strung creature, she spooked at a rattlesnake near the corral and erupted into a frenzy of kicking and panic. Crow, seeing the commotion from the far field, ran, his heart a hammer, expecting shattered wood and a crippled animal. He skidded to a halt at the fence. Inside the swirling dust, Lee stood. She was not waving her arms or shouting. She was perfectly still, her eyes soft, humming a low, melodic tune that seemed to vibrate in the very air. The mare, white-eyed and trembling, stopped her thrashing. She let out a shuddering breath, and slowly, hesitantly, lowered her great head to press her velvety muzzle into Lee's outstretched, scarred palm. Crow watched, the breath caught in his own throat. A forgotten feeling, warm and terrifying, fissured deep within him. That evening, a thick, woven wool blanket, clean and smelling of sage, lay folded at the foot of her cot in the tack room. Then came the storm. It did not approach, it unleashed itself. The sky turned the color of a bruise, and the wind arrived first, a screaming herald. What followed wasn't rain, but a deluge thrown horizontally, beating the earth into submission. Lee was in the stable when she heard the first terrible drumming on the roof, and then saw the cascade, a solid sheet of water pouring through a rotten patch directly onto the meticulously stacked winter hay. If it was ruined, the horses would starve. The thought propelled her into motion. She dragged a stiff canvas tarp toward the loft ladder. The wind tore at her, the thunder was a physical shockwave. In the loft, the hay was slick underfoot. As she fought to unfold the heavy canvas, a shriek of wind shook the entire barn. Her foot flew out from under her. There was a moment of terrible weightlessness, a cry lost to the storm's roar, and then the hard, final impact of her body against the loft floor, her world going dim at the edges. Inside the cabin, Crow paced. The storm was fierce, but his unease was a separate, sharper thing. Her lamp in the tack room had not been lit. He told himself she was prudent, waiting it out. But the memory of her song calming the mare flashed behind his eyes. When a peal of thunder shook the very foundation stones, he could bear the uncertainty no longer. He shoved the door open into the gale, the rain instantly soaking him, and plunged toward the stable. He found her in the loft, a small, still shape against the golden hay. Her skin was pale, a trickle of crimson stark against her dark hairline. "The hay," she murmured, her eyes fluttering, clouded with pain. "Must keep it dry." In that moment, every last barrier within him shattered. "Hang the hay," he growled, the words rough with an emotion he didn't recognize. He knelt and gathered her up, her lightness a shock, and carried her down the ladder. He did not take her to the tack room. He crossed the yard, kicked open his own door, and brought her across the threshold into the warmth of the main house for the first time. He laid her gently on the rug before the hearth, stoking the fire into a roaring blaze. With hands that could bend iron, he carefully bathed the cut on her head, his touch astonishingly gentle. He sat beside her through the long night, keeping watch as the storm spent its rage outside. The morning dawned clean, washed, and full of treacherous mud. It was this mud that brought the visitors. Mayor Sutton, Jeb, and 2 others rode up, their expressions already arranged in smug anticipation. "Crow!" Sutton hallooed, reining in. "Come to see how your charity case is managing. Has the little bird flown the coop yet?" The cabin door opened. Crow emerged, filling the space. He held his rifle, not aimed, but present in the crook of his arm like an extension of his will. He was different. Not just a large man, but an impregnable fact. His gaze swept over them, and their chuckles died, strangled. "She is inside," Crow said, his voice low, a distant rockslide. "Resting." Jeb found his voice, a nervous sneer in it. "Resting? In your house? You've gone soft, letting the help get so comfortable." Crow took one step forward, and the porch plank groaned. "She is not help." The words were quiet, precise, and carried the density of forged iron. "She is the grace this hard place never knew it needed. You sent her here to be broken. Your aim was poor. She stays. Under my sight, under my roof, under my protection." He let the silence hang, heavy and cold. "If any man among you sets foot on this land again, or speaks her name without the respect she has earned 10 times over, you will answer to me." He worked the rifle's lever with a smooth, metallic clack-clack. The sound was the full stop at the end of his sentence. Sutton's face drained of its bluster. He looked into Crow's eyes and saw no bluff, only a terrifying, absolute truth. This man would turn this ridge red for her. The mayor tugged his reins sharply. "This isn't over," he muttered, a hollow threat to save face. The group turned their horses and splashed back down the muddy track, their cruelty rendered small and pathetic against the vastness of the land and the man who guarded it. Crow watched until they were specks, then vanished into the cabin. Lee was awake, propped against cushions by the fire, the blanket around her shoulders. She had heard every word. "You defended me," she said, her voice full of a quiet awe. "Why?" Crow stood by the fire, a giant wrestling with a new and fragile vocabulary. "This land." He began, staring into the flames. It was stone. It was wind. It was silence. You didn't just clean a stable. You listened to the silence and answered it. You didn't just tend animals. You tended a soul, mine. He turned to her, his harsh features softened by the firelight. He slowly extended his hand, palm up, an offering and a question. "Stay. Not because you have nowhere else to go. Stay because I am asking you. Because this is your home." Lee looked at his hand, scarred and capable of great violence and now, profound gentleness. She placed her own hand in his. A perfect fit. "I stay," she said. And the certainty in her voice was the foundation of everything that would follow. The world beyond the ridge did not change. It remained harsh, judgmental, and often cruel. But on the ridge, where the stone met the sky, a light now burned in the cabin window every single night, a defiant beacon against the darkness. They proved, together, that strength is not about the volume of your voice, but the depth of your silence. That home is not a place you find, but a truth you build, side by side, with calloused hands and steadfast hearts. Have you ever been told you are too small, too quiet, too different to handle the load before you? Have you ever been the one everyone else wrote off as a lost cause? Remember, Lee, remember that your true value is not reflected in the eyes of those who mock you, but is forged in the quiet, stubborn furnace of your own perseverance. Your endurance, your next breath, your decision to rise again, that is your ultimate answer, your most powerful defiance. If this story of unspoken bonds and quiet strength found a home within you, please give this video a like and subscribe to Winds of Thought. Share it with someone who needs to remember the formidable power they hold inside.